be crossing live to the media centre at Government Buildings, where we expect to hear an update on Covid-19 restrictions from An Taoiseach Leo Varadkar. We expect he will be joined by the Minister for Health, Simon Harris, the Education Minister, Joe McHugh, and the Chief Medical Officer, Dr Tony Holohan. And we're joined here in studio by our correspondents, George Lee and Emma O'Kelly. And George, before I go to you, I'm going to cross over to our education correspondent, Emma O'Kelly, because I think it's fair to say we have what is called breaking news, literally in the last minute.
We do, Sharon. Just in the last minute, we have news that the Leaving Certificate exams will go ahead, but they have been postponed until late July or early August. This was more or less expected, but we have confirmation today. The Leaving Certificate exams will go ahead, but later on in the summer. As to the Junior Certificate exams, they have been cancelled this year. They will be replaced by junior cycle exams that will be held in classrooms, in schools, sometime in September. Those details have to be worked out. But returning to the Leaving Cert, for those students who have subjects such as history, geography, art, woodwork, where they have projects, the deadline for those projects, which was in May, has now been pushed on also until the late summer. So that is the news. There's a lot of detail to be worked out. One important point, I'd say, one of the reasons why this decision has been taken is because there is a desire across the education sector to bring students back into the classroom before the exams, because, of course, they're at home now. So the hope would be that students will be able to return to their classroom over the summer for perhaps 2 weeks. But the details have to be worked out.
Right, OK. And the big question, of course, is how all this will be received by those very same students and by their teachers. Have we any idea even at this stage?
Well, I have heard that the engagement with the trade unions so far from the department, I've heard that engagement has been positive. Obviously, this would require teachers to go back into school over the summer months. But another important thing to say, Sharon, is that all of this, of course, is predicated on the wider public health situation. This is the situation as it stands. More detail in terms of the scheduling of the exams and details like that will come to us in late June, when we have a clearer idea of what that public health picture might be by the end of July or August.
OK. Meanwhile, George will be crossing over to the media centre at Government Buildings. Realistically, there will not be a single person out there who will be expecting these restrictions to be lifted today.
No, I don't think there's any expectation at all. I think that's been made fairly clear, although they did have to come to the formal decision. It has only been 2 weeks since the restrictions were put in place, even to get a feel for how they would feed back in terms of how effective they really were in reducing intensive care unit beds for occupation, for instance, or even the case trajectory. You'd need the full 2 weeks. Yeah. So we haven't had the full 2 weeks since they've been implemented. Maybe we need another day or two. So until you get all of that information, very unlikely that they would lift them. Much more likely they're going to renew them. And whether or not they tweak them, we'll wait and see.
Do we expect then today to receive a time frame, a provisional time frame? In other words, in X number of weeks, we expect a gradual, phased easing of these restrictions. Will we get that level of information, do you think, today?
I would be very surprised that they would give a commitment like that, because they don't really know. We know from yesterday that the reproduction rate of the virus has been reduced to somewhere in around 1, but needs to get down well below 1 towards 0 before they'd be really happy. But somewhere in around 1 is inexact, so they don't really know. So they cannot give exact commitments yet. They most likely will say, give a date at which they'll review them again. The last date was 2 weeks, perhaps it'll be 3, maybe it'll be 4, maybe it'll be 2. But it's stuff like that. It is an ongoing battle against this virus that they are dealing with. And until they see how that's going to go, they don't really know when and how they can lift those restrictions. And also there's the issue of an exit strategy. How do you lift them? Yeah. Because we have to remember that the virus is still active, that if you lift the restrictions, it will spread among the community. And as a result of that, then when is it safe? And who is it safe to let go out and so on?
And one of the key metrics that they will be looking at is testing capacity. And we know that we're nowhere near that 15,000 mark that the Minister mentioned a couple of weeks ago. That and the contact tracing. I think Dr Tony Holohan said he would like to see all that happening in real time.
Yes.
How soon do you think we can get there?
We're quite a long way from that, I think. Even now we're getting results back in from labs in Germany over the last 2 days in terms of tests that were sent there to help clear the backlog here. Obviously, some of the laboratories here are coming on stream with more reagents, and so they really do have the intention to try and crank that up, but we're nowhere near there yet.
All right. And we will be crossing over to the media centre at Government Buildings. I don't know whether we can put up a shot. It's a fairly empty-looking setting as we're looking at it, but we do expect the Taoiseach to emerge in the next couple of minutes, flanked by, as we said, Minister Joe McHugh, Minister Simon Harris, and the Chief Medical Officer generally does attend these updates. Also will be crossing over just as soon as they emerge. But over to you again, Emma. I mean, you were saying there that the practical matters will have to be teased out over the coming weeks and months. Many will be wondering if the Leaving Cert takes place later on in the summer, whether it's August or September or whatever. How does that leave the new college year?
The college year, Sharon, and also the start of the school year. It's looking likely that there will be a delay in the college year for first years. This is because the whole CAO process will be knocked back. Now, the intention is to bring it as close to its current timing as is possible. It's also quite likely that there will be a delay to the start of the school year this year, because if the exams are held, say, in August, you need teachers to correct those papers. Normally teachers take on this job over the summer, but of course teachers, if they're back in school, that makes it more difficult. So
there has been pressure on all of that in recent years.
Absolutely,
in any event.
Yes. So there may well be a delay to the start of the school year as well, and that in turn will affect when these school-based junior cycle exams will take place. But really, across the education world, in terms of people who really know the system, I think the view was taken that this is the fairest way. There was an argument being put forward for predicted grades. This is that students, teachers would give them a prediction of how they might have done. But there was a sense that the class of 2020 should be treated like any other and should have their Leaving Cert.
Well, it'll be a summer to remember for the class of 2020. Let's cross over to the Taoiseach now. He's about to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Throughout our history, Good Friday has had a special meaning. It's a day associated with suffering and sacrifice and sorrow, and also with new beginnings, the promise of rebirth and renewal and better days to come. It's also the day an agreement was signed in Belfast to bring peace to our island, ending the troubles in the north. During the worst year of those troubles, the poet Seamus Heaney spoke about what was happening and predicted that if we winter this one out, we can summer anywhere. I know these words have provided inspiration to many Irish people as we deal with this emergency. They remind us that we are in this together, that we can get through it, and that better days will come. To the Irish people, I say thank you. Thank you for your forbearance and for the sacrifices you've made so far. I know that many people are feeling frustrated, captive, and I know the fine weather makes that even harder. We all want to be outside. We want to be with friends and family. We want to see the mountains and the sea. We want to feel that we can go anywhere. We want to be free. And I know it is very difficult, but every sacrifice that we make is helping to save lives. It's making sure that our health service is not overwhelmed. It's making things a little easier for those working on the front line and those backing them up, whether it's support staff, administrators, or partners at home. Because the vast majority of people have heeded the advice of the experts, we've been able to interrupt the spread of the virus. We've been able to shelter the most vulnerable and protect them. Your sacrifices are making a difference. We've slowed the spread of the virus considerably, but unfortunately we have not stopped its spread. We all know people who are suffering and grieving at this time. Too many have died, and sadly more will die and get sick before this is over. So today's message is that we cannot be complacent and we cannot lose focus. What we're doing is difficult, but it is making a difference, and we have to keep going. We need to persevere, and we need to maintain our discipline and resolve. The restrictions we introduced 2 weeks ago were set to expire on Sunday. Today, the expert recommendation is to extend them for a further 3 weeks until Tuesday, May 5th. The government has accepted this recommendation. I know many of us would like to know when things will go back to normal and life will be as it was. We are working towards that time, and we're planning carefully so that we get there safely. The truth is, nobody knows for certain when that will be or how our lives will be different when it comes. All we can do for now is to take one day at a time, to think of others, and to choose hope and solidarity over self-interest and fear. Your decisions will save lives. What may be an inconvenience for some will be life-saving for others. So I'm calling on everyone to do what is asked of them, to be tolerant and compassionate, to think about each other before we think about ourselves. Nothing greater will be asked of any of us. In one of his best collections of poems, Heaney celebrated what he described as the human chain of help that can bring out and bring about an almost miraculous recovery. As Heaney wrote, we were all the more together for having had to turn and walk away. In the days ahead, we must continue to turn and walk away from each other and from doing things we would like to do. But we will be all the more together for having done so. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay at home. Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. McHugh.
Gwrmaigad a hishi, agus aniu, bimeg Janu Fogru, son na Jaggery, agus na Delta Scollina, agus an Kenyu at had the ye, Fohanya an Artest, agus an Chastis Sociara Fosta, agus Tamig Sminu Frida and Brew attire na Dinyaga, and Brew attire na Tishmari. A leg agus an struss agus na duchlani agus na ruddy ainta jacker a taigesh leis an mícintethe a taigesh fosta agus aintiam leis an tisha agus leis an chapter a taig buncha mahaniu leis an scale fruide an pobl a lig ag Janu an ruddy jerfa ag Janu an ruddy tabhachta ag fanach sawaile agus ag bogarai leis an duchlan a taigesh sanam a tairoin. Today I am making and taking a number of steps in relation to school reopening and state examinations designed to give students, parents, teachers and the wider education community certainty. I am acting as quickly as possible in light of the updated public health advice, as I know for many parents and students, especially exam year students, the most important issue now is clarity on the path ahead. These decisions are being taken in the best interests of our children, our young people, our school and our wider society. As part of the wider public health measures, schools will remain closed until further notice. We will only take the step to reopen schools when the public health advice assures us that it is appropriate to do so. I appreciate the efforts that parents around the country are making to teach their children at home, the work of teachers and lecturers to continue education and the difficulties faced by all our young people in this situation. Junior cycle final examinations due to take place in June will be replaced by school-based exams and assessments held early in the new school year. Discussions will take place with teachers' unions and school management to allow this unique arrangement to take place in what is a response to a national crisis. We are postponing Leaving Certificate examinations to begin in the last week of July or early August, subject to public health advice. Practical examinations for Leaving Certificate students, which were due to have been held in May, are deferred. They will be rescheduled for late July, early August. The new Leaving Certificate exam timetable will be confirmed in early June. Our preference continues to be to give the Leaving Cert students of 2020 the opportunity to sit their exams and complete their secondary school education. It is vitally important that these Leaving Cert students have some class-based school time before facing into exams. It will give students an opportunity to refocus and teachers an opportunity to reassure and mentor in advance of the exams. We are working with our education partners, the teacher unions and the school management bodies to make that a reality. All decisions we are taking in relation to rescheduling exams are based on current public health advice and put the best interests of students first. The welfare of students and that of their families is front and centre in all decision making. Students and their families have been seeking clarity. Today's announcement addresses that. It also provides them with several weeks of advance notice to prepare for the examinations. I hope it helps to alleviate some stress being experienced by students and their families at this time. I want to take this opportunity to recognise and thank our education partners for their engagement in this time of national crisis. I know that you have had to deal with many unforeseen challenges and stresses over the last few weeks. Today's decision allows you time to take a break over Easter, to rest and to recharge. Take care of yourselves, use your time wisely and make sure to take a further break in June. Go to Maigov.
Thanks, Joe. It's just over 2 weeks since the Taoiseach and I stood in this very same spot and announced restrictions that imposed great change on all of our lives. And it probably feels like the longest 2 weeks imaginable to many of you, perhaps especially to our children who already measure time so differently to grown-ups and who are missing filling it with their friends, plays and hugs. And also for older people who are often living their days at home alone and missing the simple pleasures, and indeed many of them missing their own grandchildren too. For them, for all of us, the last 2 weeks has been extremely hard. But these last 2 weeks have indeed been for all of them. They've been for all of us. We're doing this for our families, for our friends, for our communities. We're doing this to save lives. And these last 2 weeks have had real purpose. They have made a real and meaningful difference. Just a couple of weeks ago, when we traced the contacts of people who got the virus, we found that on average a person had been in contact with 20 other people. That then reduced to 10, then to 5, then to 3, and now to 2. Just a couple of weeks ago, the rate of infection with this virus was growing at 33% a day. It's now below 10%, but we have to get it lower again. Just a couple of weeks ago, a person who got the virus typically infected about 4 others. First, we as a people, all of us together, got that down to 2.5, and last night we learned from our scientific experts that it's now approaching 1. But we need to get it lower again. You are doing this, you are making this happen, you are flattening the curve. And you're helping to protect the healthcare workers on the front line who are working so hard for us. You're staying at home to help protect all the people who still have to go to work. And you're helping keep our health service functioning so that we can look after people who get seriously ill. You are saving so many lives. Isn't that an incredible thing to be able to say? In honour of our countrymen and women who have not survived this virus, we have to keep at it. So it might feel like a long time since we last stood here, but it was just 2 weeks. And look at what you have done and achieved within that time. And think of how much more we now must do. Certainty is absolutely in short supply these days. There's so much we still don't know about this virus, and there are still some questions we can't answer. Many of the certainties we took for granted in life before COVID-19 have been whipped away, and our best laid plans gone, something far more than awry. But there is a certainty that we can begin to cleave together. We can make a difference to how our country comes through this, and we can make the biggest difference of all by saving lives. I'll not stop repeating it even if you're sick and tired of hearing us say it. Doctors can save hundreds of lives during this pandemic, but you can save thousands. You've done so much in just 2 weeks. And we know it's hard, but we can do this. So many of the things that make us proud to be Irish are in temporary suspension. Our sociability, our warmth, our close and affectionate ties. But I've never been prouder to be Irish. In uncertain times, I've never been so sure of what we are all doing. We are making a massive national effort, and yes, it is going to take us longer. But the hard days you've already put in are putting us in a much better place than we had feared. And hard days for a bit longer are so worth it for better days ahead.
Thanks very much, Taoiseach Minister. So we now have an opportunity for a few questions. We're going to kick off with Kevin Riley, followed by Hugh O'Connell, and then Sean Clark.
Question for either the Taoiseach or the Chief Medical Officer. You'd said before that it was going to be very difficult to keep the discipline for all of this and that there had been some concern about whether the enforcement might slip. Is there any indication after this next 3 weeks, after the May Bank holiday weekend, is there a target in mind by which people will know that some sort of relaxation can be achieved and we can begin to return to something that approaches normality? And also, has there been any consideration given to restricting the freedom of people to go towards or from airports and seaports? We've seen a lot of anecdotal reports about people coming off ferries, coming from the neighbouring island, going towards holiday homes. A lot of people are very concerned and frustrated that while they are being subjected to these now legally enforceable measures, that those coming from another island can't, and that the efforts that we're making here could be undermined by their visits.
Yeah, just in terms of people going through the airports and also coming over on ferries, I've seen the anecdotal reports, but we have checked this out, and the number of people coming in by ferry is really minimal, and the number of people coming in by flights is down 95%, and those who are Irish people, Irish citizens returning home. But it is something that we're going to keep under review, because we know that in other countries where they've successfully suppressed and contained the virus, like China, for example, like Singapore, their difficulty now is largely imported cases. So, we do know that's something we have to monitor very closely. Just in terms of the restrictions, as you know, they've been extended now until the 5th of May. It is, of course, our fervent hope that after that we'll be able to begin to unwind the restrictions. But I cannot guarantee that that's going to happen. It really does depend on what happens over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks and how people respond to our call to continue the restrictions, to continue those behaviours, not just social distancing, but also hand washing, coughing etiquette, all of those things. If people continue to take those on board and do what they've done over the past 2 weeks, I think we can be more hopeful that in 3 weeks' time we can begin to ease the restrictions. But they won't be eased in one go. They'd have to be done bit by bit. And we'll also have to see whether the virus starts to circulate and rise again once restrictions are eased, because then they might have to be reimposed. So I know how difficult this is. In terms of what we'll be looking at over the next 3 weeks, there's no magic figure, if you like, that we're looking for, but the kind of thing that we'll be looking at will be hospitalisations, whether they're stabilising or falling or increasing. Same thing goes for the number of people who are in our ICUs. Also the number of new cases and the percentage increase in new cases. So there's no magic figure, but it's those kind of things that we're going to have to look at. And also in 3 weeks' time, we'll have some idea as to how countries in Europe that are planning to ease restrictions have done. So as you'll know, in Denmark, for example, it's proposed to reopen schools and childcare in the next week or so. In Austria, it's proposed to open some shops. And we'll be watching very closely. Czech Republic is another country that is easing. We'll be watching very closely what happens in those countries to see if they're successful in easing the restrictions or whether the virus starts to spread and increase again. And it's not a risk or an experiment we're willing to take in Ireland as yet. But as is often the case with this virus, other countries that are hit first and hit harder at least allow us some guidance as to how we can respond here.
Thank you. Can I just ask a couple of questions of each individual on stage? Minister Harris, can you confirm whether you'll be extending the enforcement powers that Gardaí have that are due to expire at midnight on Sunday? Will they be extended for the 3-week period? And perhaps this is for the Chief Medical Officer. Can you maybe tell us when we might have a testing regime that will have that 48-hour turnaround, that will be able to give us back test results and will clear any backlog that exists? And can you confirm if there is a backlog at the moment? Because there's quite a lot of confusion about that at the moment and how many people are awaiting tests. Minister McHugh, can you tell us what level of engagement you've had with the Teachers Union on this? We've had some indications that the agreement that was reached with SNAs is getting a lot of pushback from the unions. So to what extent have you engaged with the unions on this plan? Will schools be open over the summer, for example? Will they reopen towards the end of May and be open through June and early July? And Taoiseach, can you give us an update in relation to government formation? Have you met with Micheál Martin? Is there a framework document? Is it agreed? Will it be published? Thank you.
Okay. I might take that and then go to the Chief Medical Officer, Minister McHugh, Minister Harris. The two negotiating teams for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are meeting as we speak. All things going to plan. Those negotiating teams will agree a framework document today. and that will be referred to me as President of Fine Gael and also to the President of Fianna Fáil. And the idea then is that we would meet sometime next week, and if we can agree those documents, to then share them with our parliamentary parties. And if that's satisfactory, we'd then be in a position to reach out to Labour, the Greens, Social Democrats, to see if one or more of those parties would agree to be a third pillar in a new government. And both parties are very much of the view that what the country needs for the next 4 to 5 years is a majority government, a stable government, one that can bring the country through this crisis, get our economy and our society going again, and look to the future. So we will need that third pillar. We will be encouraging one or more of those parties to join us. If that happens, we'll then be able to negotiate a programme for government, and that programme for government would have to be ratified by the members of each of the three parties. So there's a bit of a way to go yet, but a key milestone that I think we may achieve today is the two negotiating teams between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael agreeing a paper which can then be referred to the two party leaders, and we'll take it from there. So, Tony?
Yes, so just Hugh, in relation to testing, we need to considerably grow our testing capacity from what it is at the moment. It's not just testing. It's sampling, the taking of the sample, it's the tests, the processing in the laboratory, it's the contact tracing that follows from that. It's then dealing with each of the individual contacts who may need to be sampled and tested themselves in a new arrangement as part of our, if you like, a part of our management in a situation where we might be contemplating lifting restrictions, and that's what we have to plan for. It's a considerably greater number of tests than we currently are doing. And the HSE and Paul Reid has strengthened his team around the planning of this in recent days to try to give us, as quickly as we can possibly get it, the capacity that we think we need to not only deal with what's coming through right now, because we think we're at or about at the point where we think we can deal in real time with the number of cases that are currently presenting with our current case definition. We'll be looking to try and broaden and make that case definition more sensitive for a situation that would be appropriate if we were thinking about lifting restrictions. And that would mean that we would need to be greatly increasing the number of people tested, not for the purpose of testing but for the alone, but for the purpose of ensuring that we had a result back within either same day or following day, that we could then contact trace within same day or following day. So that real-time turnaround, that's what we're really going to need. Because if we manage to suppress this infection in the way that we are optimistic that we will, but we haven't evidence that we have as yet, we have to absolutely be sure that we have the greatest chance of picking up and detecting in real time any new cases and moving and responding. Because as we change some of the measures that are in place, we really need to know that as quickly as possible, if there is an effect in terms of the increase in the number of cases resulting from any of those relaxations, that we can pick that up and respond to that as quickly as possible.
When are we going to get there? What's the backlog?
So as quickly as possible. And we're going to need to do that work certainly within the period of time that we now have between now and the end of this month to allow ourselves to be assured that, first of all, the character, and I've said this on many occasions, the characteristics of the disease are such that they are where we want them to be. Ideally, the reproductive number that the Minister has mentioned of 1 is well below 1, that the number of cases coming into ICU is much lower than we've seen, and that's dropped in an encouraging way as we've seen in the course of the last week. We're going to need to see that in place, those disease characteristics in place, and then also those arrangements in terms of the public health management, a really responsive, high-capacity system for sampling, for testing, for contact tracing, and for real-time reporting. And we need all of those requirements to enable us to contemplate a change in the measures that are in place at this moment in time. So in terms of backlog, I know that the HSE has an arrangement in place through Germany. I've given figures every evening this week in terms of the numbers of cases that have come back through that, and I think the HSE is confident that it will have worked its way through that within a matter of days.
Two issues you raised in relation to school closures. Schools are closed now until further notice, and at all times will be guided by the public health experts. I've always said that we will need Leaving Cert certificate students in their classrooms for a minimum of 2 weeks. I haven't changed my position on that, and that is important to point out. But in relation to your second question around consultation with unions, there's been extensive consultation. There's been tremendous goodwill at all times coming from the unions and the management bodies as well. And I can say as well that the collective response from them is that they're united in dealing with this problem, whatever it takes to get the Leaving Cert through, whether it's end of July or beginning of August, they will be there to do that. And in relation to where we'll be over the next course of time, we'll be continually monitoring the situation, getting feedback from the public health officials, but most importantly is the consultation. And even during the last few weeks, and last week, for example, I had a web conference with all the spokespersons from the different parties and independents, getting their opinion and their perspective. So we'll continue to keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah, it is my intention to extend the regulations to cover the period of the NEFID recommendations. It was always the intention that the regulations would run alongside the recommendations and restrictions of NEFID, so I intend to extend the regulations for the period of these restrictions.
Taoiseach, did you consider any further restrictions this time around? And given that we've seen in the last few days some people flouting them after only 2 weeks, how do you propose to keep people sticking to them over weeks 3, 4, 5, however long it is? And Minister McHugh, when it comes to admissions now to college, obviously that process is going to be delayed. Have you any idea how long it's going to be before some of those people who do their Leaving Cert in July or August can actually get in and start their first year of college?
Just in terms of the restrictions, as has been the case from the very start, we're very much guided by the advice of the National Public Health Emergency Team, so I might ask the CMO to comment on that. In terms of enforcement, the laws that were enacted the other day by Minister Harris, they will be extended until the 5th of May, and we'll need to have a ongoing guard operation to ensure that people comply. But as I've always said from the start, it's not our desire to turn Ireland into a police state, even for one day, never mind for a month. And I don't want to see those powers used anything other than sparingly as a last resort. And the vast majority of people have complied, are cooperating, and that needs to continue, and I believe it will continue. And I want to thank the Irish people for their cooperation and their forbearance to date. But the Gardaí do now have very extensive powers that can be used if they have to be used. But let's not use them. Let's all do the right thing.
Yeah, Sean, in relation to that transition now from post-primary to third level, we've had a lot of engagement with representatives from the third level sector. They've been very positive, and they have adopted the position of flexibility, that they'll work with the new timeline, and that's really, really important. And whatever decision is taken, I believe it'll be a positive one. And just to widen it out a bit, a lot of our post-primary school students go to Northern Ireland, they go to Britain. We're working and engaging with the authorities in Great Britain as well, because I know timelines, because they're changing now, that there'll be a different timeline for entry into third level in Britain. So our officials have engaged. I've formally written to the Department of Education in London, and also I've been engaging with the Minister for Education, Gavin Williamson, who I spoke to this morning, that he's willing to work with us and he wants to find a solution to this as well. Well, that will be a decision for following the engagement, and obviously today we're announcing the new date, so I'm confident whatever date it'll be will meet the requirements, and whatever date that is, I'm not in a position to give you that today.
Okay, next question.
Yeah. So we met as a National Public Health Emergency Team again this morning, and one of the questions we always ask is, are there additional measures that we need to take? And we gave consideration to that, and our recommendation was to just stick with the current set of measures, but for an extended period of time. What we've seen over the course of the last number of weeks, and as we've been reporting to, is a substantial drop in the so-called reproduction number in the population. It's gone from maybe a peak in this country at around 4, we think, in the early days around St. Patrick's Day, and it's continued to drop, and it's now hovering around 1. We need to be sure that we get it below 1, and we're not certain at this point in time whether we're a little bit above 1 or a little bit below 1, and we need to continue to monitor for another period of time. We're confident that we have the right set of measures in place to achieve that. It's been achieving a continuing drop. Obviously, we see that stall in a way that gives us concern. We might have to give further consideration to that, but we think that's the right set of measures for now, and we haven't advised government to take any additional measures at this moment in time.
Taoiseach Radker, Cameron from the Journal.ie. I'm wondering if you could give us an update on your conversations with your counterparts in the UK. Are there fears that we will have to remain restricted for longer if their crisis continues as it's ongoing now? And as something of a follow-up to that, the PSNI in the North have launched a dedicated webpage for people to report instances where social distancing isn't being adhered to. Would you consider introducing something like that here?
Well, first of all, my counterpart in the UK is in hospital, as you know. So, other than sending him a text message to wish him the best a few days ago, we haven't been in direct contact since the middle of March. But there is, of course, ongoing contact between the Irish government and the British government. So, Mr. Donoghue was in touch with the Chancellor of the Exchequer only the other day, with his counterpart and Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. So really it's a case of just information sharing and communications and giving each other the heads up on things, because the situations you can see in Britain is very different and very much more severe than what we're facing here in Ireland. And what we want to do in Ireland is avoid the scenes and the awful experience that people are having in Spain and Italy and the UK and France. And it's our objective to achieve that, and I believe we can. Obviously, law enforcement is a matter for the Gardaí rather than for me as Taoiseach, but I wouldn't like to get into that space. You know, I have seen, on social media, particularly in the UK, people reporting people for having gone for a second run or for being 2.1 kilometre from their house or that type of thing. I don't really think we should be in that space. The laws are there for the Gardaí to use sparingly, where people are egregiously flouting the rules or where they're not cooperating with the Garda who tells them to go home. But I don't think that we will suppress this virus by becoming the valley of the squinting window. I think we'll suppress this virus by doing the right thing by each other and doing the right thing by our neighbours and by following the advice that we've received from our expert doctors and our expert team, and bearing in mind in doing so we're helping to save the life perhaps of somebody we know, an elderly person or a person with an underlying condition, and we're also making life that little bit easier for those who are on the front line trying to treat this virus.
Higgins from the Sun.
Minister McHugh, am I right to say that for non-leaving cert students, the school year they won't be going back to school until next school year?
No, that's not correct. At the moment, the schools are closed, and that will be the situation until further notice. So we'll be guided by the advice and the expert advice. So no, we're not ruling that out.
Taoiseach, there will be people who see 3 more weeks of restrictions today and the good weather at the weekend, and they'll think, well, I'll just relax it for this weekend and I'll go see family, and then I won't see them again for 3 weeks. What would you say to those people?
I'd really encourage people not to visit their family over the Easter weekend or over the course of the next 3 weeks. There is, of course, an exception, where somebody has to visit a relative to provide essential care. That is different, but that is an exception and a relatively rare one. And the reason why I'd ask people, particularly not to see their friends and relatives over the next few weeks, is what we're trying to do here is to confine this virus to households. To make sure that if it's in a household, it stays in that household and we don't see spread from one household to the other. So if somebody from one household meets with somebody from another household, that's how the virus spreads. And that's really why we're asking people to make sure that you don't mix with another household, except for those unusual exceptions and rare exceptions that have been set out, because that is how the virus spreads. And this is the whole point of this, is to making sure it doesn't spread from one household to the other, and that we always observe those really basic things, and we need to come back to them again and again. Keeping a physical distance of 2 metres, washing your hands for 20 seconds regularly, making sure that you observe coughing and sneezing etiquette. Those actions, above all other actions, are going to be the ones that are most successful in containing the virus.
Is ceistí seo an Aaron McHugh tá told seo ar fád tugaí agus tána héanaach just más féidir leat é rá rís tá scoil go le a hol. An mu sé gceiste go fáil go rací na daltaí arás ar an scoil Solomé na scrúda thir siúil agus céhhéad idirbhartíochta atá deanta agaí leis na ceart cuman go dtí seo agus go bhís duitse an bhfuil siad ar bord leis an moladh seo.
Okay, dús bara an cinniú atá deanta inniu bimime ag brachnú ar na dalta scolanna a gceanú an airteist agus fáinne na dalta scolanna scola a ganu an artesh be an kenyu fudud an scrudia ta Crete Sacria Fahonia me mehev to shin Bogamudge and data shin Guji Jeremy Uil no Guji and Erdus me Lunasa August to shin Tanakru shin into Tabakta mar vi na chapterik the tag bunchama on the Tishmary August na Chile leg August na Dalta Skolina leg we should fin brew lesson me kinchaha lesson that August we should fin stros agus brew fudud and mi kinche agus shin and fag or dachri me and can you shin agus modulation chastas socira being chastas socira ag bogarais the snarangana erdus golui erdus imi man 4 nera chucking the skolin the rash eganam shin agus bishin differul bishin scrudia agriha lesh na muntri agus na skolin hanafein agus comaikli shin na ruddy tag bogo agus an leanunahus goji and trio level bimage ag goni in a cholia leis na party a laswa ag sula mar hampla na forest patrona agus na dinne stay agus fragaras na inte agus ruddy mar sin agus bimage ag conol and commerceage bio agus a conol na dinne aga stis sa cora fasta agus Michael Scurv fudud an chapter hag na dinne aga Kinche to the Danyoiga Sachach, Tashid in a Ainer, August Nive, the Muncher Skolina, a Jagwell Lofa Fin Balla Persenta, Ach, Boilama Ahandas a goal Hag the Muncher Skolina, a Tagianu, and roll more ag fanacht a Jagwell Leshna, the Danyoiga, August a Gusage, Marhampla and Iderlin, August and Balla commerceage fosta agus tishin tawagda agus an dulgus ata orin a mahan shaw say ag fanacht I jagwell Netherlin no ag fanacht I jagwell leshan ruddy commerceage agus tishin into jacker for honey na danyoga marta should a goni agiri chagwell person that now armal lesh a Kolakia agus lesh na dinyoga egg sula fosta agus tishin jacker agus tagim the jackrakti tagim na me want the she agus tagim na ruddy julta tag bunch of machlishin agus ma hatrat hagna dinyoga conigol lesh and stader Glaku anam har kaska for honya brishu yanu agus imi mehav foster brishu foster agus the meo in koju the on rin tamajinya and shaw agus nadanya ave egg yanu and stader agus egg brachnu in the bala jackrakti agus ruddy marshan tamajinya on foster.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Easter, everyone. Thank you.
Now, we're going to go straight over to Dr. Mary Favier. She's president of the Irish College of General Practitioners and she's been waiting patiently by for us. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on the programme this afternoon. A certain amount of reassurance there from the Taoiseach and from the Minister for Health. We've interrupted the flow of the virus, we've slowed the spread, but what's patently clear is we're not there yet.
Absolutely, I think he's entirely correct. It's not a welcome extension of the restrictions, but it is a necessary one. And I think we are doing a good job. To quote Simon Harris, we've reduced the replication rate, how many additional people get it, from 33% to 10%. But I think people need to understand that that's till 10 more people. If somebody thinks of 100 people in their wider community that has this virus, in a number of days' time, when we count again, it'll be 110. And then 121. And one of those extra 10 or extra 21 may be your family member, it may be your next door neighbour, it may be your elderly relative, it could be your co-worker. And as a result, we need to keep going. And the Irish community, I think, and I say this as a resident of the community, that we've been doing a good job. People have been trying hard and obeying all the social restrictions and the distancing and the hand washing. But we know it's hard as well.
Yeah. And the Minister was at pains, wasn't he, to make that point, that this is in the hands of the public. And he said something very striking. He said doctors can save hundreds of lives, but the public can save thousands.
Yes, and as doctors, as general practitioners, we are continuing to work. We are along with everybody else in the healthcare service, to provide a service, whether it's on the telephone or in person. But it's the difference that the community can make in the heavy lifting they're doing in obeying all the restrictions. And it's hard in numbers of ways. It's hard for those who have to go to work. And I have many patients who work, for instance, in the supermarket area, who are healthcare assistants, who are carers. And they get up every day and they go to work, often seeing everybody else what they think is lying in and sleeping. And they go to work often in situations that make them anxious. And then there's all the people who are staying at home, doing all the right thing, from all those parents trying to run after small children and undertake homeschooling and all the frustrations to do with that. And then I have patients who are over 70 and until 2 weeks ago had jobs, and now they're being asked to cocoon and stay at home. And it's hard. And it's hard then for all the teenagers and the young adults, and I'm a parent of young adults myself. And I think as general practitioners, we know it's particularly hard for those who have mental health challenges and who used going to work and getting out into the open as supports to their mental health. And so we recognise that there are challenges. We'd ask people to contact their general practitioners. We'd ask people to access the support services available in mental health. And then I think we're just asking the entire community again to do it all again and say it really does make a difference, because to quote the Minister, you will save lives, many more than any doctor can.
Dr. Mary Favier, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Our economics correspondent Robert Short is also standing by for us, and people will be aware of the crippling effect COVID-19 is having on our health service. But what about our economy, Robert, and particularly those small and medium-sized businesses that have the shutters up at this time?
Well, that's right, Sharon, and I suppose there's no way of masking this. I mean, this is a crippling blow to the economy, and we've seen that appear in the numbers in terms of the numbers of people who are availing of various types of COVID-related payments, whether that's the unemployment pandemic payment, whether it's the wage subsidy scheme. We learned last night that close on 900,000 people or thereabouts are availing of a form of this subsidy in one way or the other. The Minister for Finance, Paschal Donohoe, saying this morning at a press conference that the cost of the wage subsidy scheme was between 300 and 350 million euro a week. There were some calls, at least some suggestions, that the salary cap of 76,000 euro to avail of this should perhaps be lifted, because otherwise firms may be tempted to maybe just lay off higher paid earners rather than subsidising them under the temporary wage subsidy scheme. He said that he had heard those criticisms being made. He's taking them on board, but at the moment, he said, if you were to broaden the scheme, it would of course add to the cost, and there would be a question mark over how long they could sustain it, and that he wasn't considering broadening the scheme. I mean, the numbers are there to sustain this for a period of 12 weeks. We're not beyond that period yet, so that has been factored in, but we shouldn't underestimate the kind of impact that is going to have on the economy. The central bank forecasting this day last week, in fact, coming out with a forecast of a budget deficit of close to 20 billion euro. And now that was compared to a surplus that the government had factored in this year for just over 2 billion euros. So that's the scale of the turnaround and the scale of the challenge in terms of the government having to borrow that scale of funding to sustain us through this difficult time.
And we also heard the Minister say today that the restrictions, they will not be eased in one go. There will be a gradual, a very phased easing of restrictions. There will be a new normal. We just don't know what that new normal is yet for businesses, and either do they. There's that uncertainty there, which, as we know, businesses don't like.
Yes, I mean, those services and goods that have been deemed to be non-essential and where people have been asked to stay at home, they're extremely important for the economy. The Minister for Finance saying today that it's estimated that, approximately a third of the wealth of the economy is generated from all of those activities that we have hitherto taken to be normal. Just going out, going for a meal, going to the pub, going to your DIY store, your garden centre, all of that sort of essential consumer activity, and then all of the factory-related activities that have deemed to be non-essential as well. So, a huge amount of economic activity there. It's obviously having a big impact on the economy, but this is primarily a public health crisis, and it's a public health issue that has to be solved through the way in which it has been recommended by the health experts to be solved. And one of the lines that the central bank had in their quarterly, it's very true. It says that the path of the economy will depend on the path of the virus. And the thinking is that if they can comprehensively get on top of controlling the pandemic, the Covid-19, through the various aspects of tracing and testing that Tony Holohan, the Chief Medical Officer, was specifying again in that press conference, that will enable things to return to some sort of a normality, albeit at in a staggered way, and that what would be, I suppose, much more damaging. And we've seen this in other countries such as Singapore, where they thought they were on top of this, and then they had somewhat of a relapse in some cases. It would be much more difficult to go back to where we are now in terms of economic activity and the restrictions on that, rather than getting on top of it and then reintroducing the kind of things that we have taken to be normal economic activity.
All right, just in case our viewers have just joined us, a recap on the measures announced just in the last 50 minutes. Covid-19 restrictions, they will be extended until Tuesday, May 5th. Leaving certificate exams, well, they've been postponed until late July or August. The entry date for first-year, third-level students will be delayed. Junior cert exams, they have been replaced by school-based exams, and assessments in schools are to remain closed until further notice. Emma O'Kelly is still with us. Have we any reaction, Emma, from the union so far?
Yes, this is crucial, Sharon, because if the schools are to reopen for 2 weeks, obviously that has to have the buy-in of teachers. There's a very brief statement here, a joint statement from the ASTI and the Teachers Union of Ireland. Its tone is quite positive. It says, we fully understand the decision to defer the state examinations. We welcome the fact that the government is still focused on running the Leaving Certificate. They say they're committed to serving the interests of their students. And the nub of this is that their executive committees will meet remotely this evening to decide how to proceed. So a busy evening for members of the TUI and ASTI executives, and decisions to be made.
And the Minister referenced that goodwill, didn't he, during that press conference. George, if we are to get on top of this and gradually return to normal, something Dr. Tony Holohan referenced there this afternoon is we need to get on top of our testing, ramp it up, the sampling and the contact tracing. And he spoke about doing that in real time, getting that real-time turnaround. Now, we're a long way from that, aren't we?
He didn't, and he also said he wanted to see that done in the rest of this month. Now, that is a very tall order, in all honesty. There's been a global shortage of the chemicals required in the laboratories, called reagents, and there's been a big scramble for that. There's absolutely no doubt about the will and the desire of the HSE to get on with this, and they're putting everything in place. They have 50 testing centres, and they have a lot of other laboratories now pitching in, such as Enfer, which is just outside of Naas, and also the State Laboratory, which is in back west and near Selbridge in County Kildare and elsewhere. They've also sent tests to Germany, but they need to be able to really ramp that up. Right. That will be such an important focus for everybody in the economy. If they do not get that done, these restrictions will be in place for longer. And that means we all have a vested interest in seeing them do that. And the pressure will come on the HSE to try and deliver on that. There's only so much that they can do because they're not in control of when they get the reagents and so on, but they certainly are out there looking for it, and it is the key. The other thing is that the Taoiseach made it clear that it's going to be a very bumpy process of getting back to normal. They would love to get back to normal, but they will not be lifting restrictions in any wide fashion. It'll be piecemeal, it'll be bit by bit. We may well, even when we get to that point, have to reimpose restrictions. We're going to live with this upsy-downsy stuff for quite a long time. It's a huge uncertainty, I think, for everybody.
And he also said, interestingly, that they would be looking to Europe. Some countries in Europe do intend to ease restrictions over the coming days and weeks. And the Taoiseach, interestingly, he said that's not an experiment that they're willing to take, but that will yield a certain amount of information about how the virus performs.
It will, of course, because other countries are a little bit further than us in terms of clamping down on the virus. We have done so well in clamping down on the virus in such a short period of time to get the reproduction rate down close to 1 from 4.3 and to get the number of contacts that a typical person has down from 20 to 2 today. That's the first time we heard 2. Right. That is new. So we've been doing an awful lot. The efforts that people are making are really paying off. But to lift them, and to lift them prematurely, to not have in place what is required, as Dr. Tony Holohan said, which is to clamp down even further if you find a case, would be to fail everybody. That it would waste the efforts. So
that's
it's all
the danger
connected
right now, George, isn't it? That fatigue will set in. It doesn't matter how many soothing words of Poet Laureate Seamus Heaney you employ. Some people will be feeling fed up, and that, no doubt, that frustration will increase in the coming weeks.
No doubt. I mean, we have had 2 weeks of these restrictions. We're about to have 5 because it's 3 more. And like as you go on in all of this, people go a bit stir crazy. But the point about it is that we're saving lives. We're saving not just lives, but we're saving serious sickness. And one can look across to the UK and see Boris Johnson and how ill he has become with this. It doesn't matter what age you are, this really will affect everybody. So I think that is very important. And the other thing to remember in all of this is it started with the issue about schools and school closures. The closure of the schools had such an important effect that we saw last night when we were presented the information from Professor Philip Nolan. It reduced the potential peak of the virus from 100,000 cases per day to 60,000 and bought us about 20 days for that peak. And then came the other measures. So they're saying they'll keep the schools closed until further notice for a very good reason. We are still in the battle, a battle for life against this virus that we can't see, that's able to crop up everywhere. And although it's really difficult for people, as it was very clear from that press conference, it is in all of our long-term interest to stick with the programme.
We also heard the Minister saying that the Garda powers, they will be extended, but the hope that Ireland wouldn't be turned into a police state and powers would be used sparingly. George, thank you very much. Emma has taken her leave of us. That's it from this special RTE News programme. We'll have more on the extension to the COVID-19 restrictions on our website and, of course, on the 6-1 News. I'll be back with the 9 o'clock news tonight. Until then, stay safe.